Hey guys, I'm just recording this after I've already done the entire tutorial. Unfortunately, OBS was set to not capture the very top, bottom, and left and right side of the screen. It's a very small section of the screen, so I don't think anything's missing aside from maybe some menus. But if you have any questions because there's stuff off screen, please let me know in the comments and I'll answer them as soon as I can. So in this video, we're going to go over the process of using tiered map zooms. But in order to do that, I'm going to first of all explain what they are and why they're beneficial. So I've jumped into the demo level that comes with Quest Map here to show off what they are and why they're beneficial. So if we zoom in on the map, obviously as we zoom in, it's going to get pixelated. So this is a 4K version of the map, and realistically this world is not super big. So if you have a particularly large map, even 4K is going to get really pixelated really quickly. So the way we can work around that is by using the tiered map zooms. So if I enable that here, just by going to the map helper and clicking enable tiered zoom transitions, I hit play again, we go to the map, you'll notice as I zoom in, we manage to keep a lot of that detail. And we're at the maximum zoom we can get to on the settings right now, and it's significantly better than it was before. So initially we were just using a single 4K image, which is not great for memory. And obviously if you had a larger world, you would want to go up to 8K, maybe even 16K, and that's really going to hurt your performance, particularly on lower end systems. So instead what we do is instead of doing the capture map image, we do capture tiered map images. And that captures a series of images based on these settings here. So in tiered zoom transitions, we have 3 sections here. You can do more if you want, but by default it's set up with 3. So that at zoom level 1, we'll have a single 2K image. And I'm actually going to jump into the controller. And we're just going to click on world map and turn on enable tier grid debug. We'll leave it on red. And if we hit play now, you'll see there's one image here, but as we zoom in at some point, we'll get a grid of images. So what's happening here is between this one and this one, we're actually switching images, switching from a single image to a grid of 1, 2, 3, 4 by 4. And as we go down further, it'll happen again, and we switch to a grid of, I think, 16 by 16 here. And we can make this even more apparent by jumping into the data, and if we just open up this and we pick, so let's pick this image here. If we just flip the green channel, so remember where that is. Here we go. So this looks pretty stupid, but if we just do that, so we're watching this bit here. As we zoom in, you can see it flips over. So that's just to show off that that is definitely using that image, and then as we go further in again, it'll go away. So let's undo that flip. Now, so there's a couple of things to note here. First is that when an image is outside of the map boundaries, so this image here is approaching the edge and now it's out, it gets unloaded. And actually what happens is it loads a 1 by 1 pixel transparent image instead, just to make sure it definitely unloads, because I don't entirely trust Unreal Engine's UMG systems because it's caused issues for me in the past. But yeah, so as these go off screen, these images are unloaded and they're loaded back in. So you'll only ever have as many as you can fit on the screen. So I think for this setup, the most you can have is 9 here. So that's still 9 images. It's still not great, but it allows you to balance between performance and memory usage. So if we go back to this one here, we look, so at level 1, we'll have a single image that is 2K. Once we hit a zoom of 2, we switch over to a 4 by 4 grid and they're all 1K. So at most you would have, if you were to have the entire grid in view, you would have 16 images, but we don't ever have that. As you saw, it was only ever about 9, so we end up with a 9K by 9K maximum. Just a quick note in editing here, I just said it was a 9K by 9K image. It's actually a 3K by 3K because we're only having 3 images that are 1K by 1K each. So my bad on that one. So then once we hit a zoom of 8, we go to a 16 by 16 image, and that's again 1K. So that's all well and good, but how do we do that? So this map's already set up, so I'm gonna hit pause on the record. We're gonna go back into the tutorial level we've been using for the other integrations, and we're actually gonna go through the process of setting it up in there. Okay, so now we are back in our tutorial level. We've got all our quests set up, so this should be continuing directly on. Yep, we got the quests all working and that jazz. So let's click on the map helper and let's try and get started with the tiered transitions. Now, there's a couple of things to note here. We're working with a rectangular world in this one. The support for rectangular worlds doesn't quite work as I would like with tiered transitions, but you can get around it by just capturing a square area. So we're going to work with that, and I'll go through how to do that. We're also going to go through the process of how you might use an art-based image and use AI upscaling to get a better result without having to do, say, 256 images for a 16 by 16 grid, that sort of thing. So if we jump back into perspective and we turn on enable tiered zoom transitions. Now I'm going to leave all of these settings here as default, unless as we go through and do it, it seems like I should change it. Actually, I might turn these down just so it's a little bit quicker. No, we'll leave them as default. But what I would suggest is that you just spend a little time working out what's going to work best for you with your map. The bigger your map is, the more grids you're going to want. You might end up wanting 6 or 7 zoom transition levels, and you can do that. The system will work fine. But yeah, so I would recommend playing around with those and working out what's best for you. Now, as I said, this requires this to be a square world, so we're actually going to go back into top down and we're going to switch over to a square here. And the way we're going to do that is just by finding our target points. Let's just go target. There we go. And we're going to, actually, first of all, we're going to add a plane just to make this really easy to understand. And we're going to scale this up a bunch. So if I hit R, scale this up to make sure it's covering my entire level. And it needs to be a square, so we're just going to go with something like that. Probably want it to be about in the middle. That looks about right. So we're going to actually capture this entire area. Now, in a lot of cases, you're going to probably want to capture outside because you might want your map to have like mountains on the side of it in areas that the player can't access anyway. So this might actually be a solution you might use for a rectangular map anyway. But at some point, I will be adding full rectangular support for the tier grid as well. So we're going to use this as our guide. So we're going to move the northwestern point to the northwestern side of the corner of this square. And then we're going to move the southeastern point to the southeastern corner of the square. And once we hit update on our actor, we can actually delete this plane now. Click on the map helper, we hit update, and we should, yep, we've got a perfectly square world there. So that's all good. That's all great. We've got that working. With enabled tiered zoom transitions on, we're going to go through the capture process now. Now, it will capture into this folder with this file name. So I'm actually going to make a new folder for that just so it's a bit easier for us. So let's just call this captured images. And we're going to set that as the folder we're going. So it starts off in content. So if we just get rid of all this and write captured images and make sure there's the slash at the end, and we'll call this tutorial capture, that's fine. And I'm going to hit capture tiered map images. Now, this can be a little chuggy. I'm not 100% sure the recording will keep going during this process, but we'll see how we go. So I've hit it now. As you can see, it will take a little bit because it's going to capture all those images, and that's done. Now, if we have a look in our tier data, we should see that it's using game captured images, Zoom O tutorial capture. So that's we already know it's worked. If we jump into our captured images, we have all our transitions here. So for the first one, it's that. And then if we jump into Zoom 1, we've got our map cut up into pieces, and Zoom 2, our map cut up into more pieces. So that's all great. Now the next step is that we need to do some bulk edits here. So if we hit filter, and we go to texture, because we're in captured image, that gives us all of them. We're going to select all. Actually, we're going to hit save all first and make sure they save. So that way if the engine crashes on a bulk edit, we're all good. And then we're going to right click and go Asset Actions Bulk Edit via Property Matrix. Now again, this is going to be a slow process as we change the settings. The recording may have hiccups here. If it does, I apologize. I'll cut it out in editing. So we want to go to Filter, change that to Nearest. Give that a second. We want to go to Import Settings. No, not Import Settings. Compression. And set the compression settings to be user interface 2D. And when that's done, some of these will take longer than others. We want to go to level of detail and set the texture group to UI. And they're the only three. So filter under texture, compression settings under compression, and texture group under level of detail. Once that's done, you can close this and just hit save all again. And with that, we're actually good to go with a capture. So if I hit play, we'll see that we're not losing any detail in here. I mean, obviously you're going to have some jagged edges and that sort of thing. There's only so much you can do, but if we, what's going to be the best way to show this? If we do, I guess the same thing we did last time. Let's go into this one here. Let's flip our green channel on that. And then let's even go a step further here. Let's find what is that one there on the next level down, which is here. And let's, what else can we do here to change the coloring? Doesn't really change it. There is a way to tint this, but I don't quite remember what it is. Here we go. Let's change the vibrance to like 5 there. So we got a purple one there. That should stand out. If we hit play and we zoom in up here, so you can see that we're using that version of it there. If we keep zooming, you can see we've got this version here. So that's how you get them up and going. If that's all you want, if you're happy to use the engine capture, then that's good. That's the end of this tutorial. You're all ready to go. I'm going to go through now and cover the process of how you might want to work with some AI tools to work with an art-based image without needing an entire team or a lot of time to go through and make an art version of every single one of these images. Obviously in this map it's not quite as bad because a lot of these images are just black space. But if you were to want to fill that in with mountains or like build this out as like a fantasy level where these are like farmyards with surrounded by mountains and forests or whatever, then that's going to be a lot of work. So we're going to go through that process. So now the first thing we want to do is we want to get a reference image exported. So I'm going to go into our captured images, and obviously this one here covers the entire map. We're going to use this as a reference image to build from. So we're just going to export that. So right click, go Asset Actions, Export, and you want to export that to wherever you're going to put it. I'm just going to chuck it into the project folder, and we're just going to call this map reference image. So if I navigate over to the map folder, I've got this map image here, and I've just opened that up in Krita or Krita, I'm not sure how you say it. I'm going to use Krita as the reference software here because it is completely free and it has all the features needed. Obviously, you can do all this in other software, but this specific process may change. Now, I am not an artist, so we're not going to be making the art in here, but we will be using Krita as a way to process the image. So I've just got this open here, but we're actually going to jump over to another piece of software called Incarnate, which is an online map maker. I think it's about $5 US a month, and that's what I use to make the map for the demo level. So we're going to use that to create the actual art. So I'm going to hit Create Map. We're going to choose a tile set. Let's go with the parchment world. Make this sort of map. And we're going to click choose style. We're going to set this as high as possible. Now the reason for this is the higher we work with, the less work the AI has to do to upscale things. Whether you want to rely on AI more or less is up to you, obviously, but AI can introduce some artifacts, so we're going to go with this. We're also going to go with a square because we're using a square image. We're going to click Create Map. Now again, you can use any method of creating the art here. If you are an artist, you can make the map by hand. If you have other software you like there are quite a lot of solutions for map making, then you can use them. But we're going to work with Inkarnate here. There is a free version of Inkarnate, but it's very limited and it doesn't even let you import images. So I've got to remember how to do that now. I think we want to go with a new stamp. Yep, that's correct. We want to go open catalog and upload. So I'm actually going to use Krita to turn this into a JPEG because it's not going to let me use a TGA. We're just going to export it to the same folder. We're going to use JPEG. We can probably shrink it down because we only need this as a reference piece. It's only 2048. That's okay. We'll use that. So let's go JPEG. We'll just leave it as map reference image. Okay. And that should be everything we need. We'll just make sure it's there. Yep. So we're going to go upload. And give me 1 second. Apologies for that. So I'm just going to copy paste the folder from here. I'm going to click on upload, go to that folder, and we're going to select the JPEG. Now this will let you scale it up. You obviously need to scale it to the right size. I'm not really sure if there's an easier way to get it to be the exact size. I think it places it in the middle. It does. So let's just get it to go. Looks like it needs to be 4 times. So if we save stamp, just give it a second. We can then go back and find it in here somewhere. I'm not really sure where we find our own stamps. My art. Click on that. Continue. And then we want to put it in and then scale it up. So I guess we're going to go to 400. Looks about right. And we just place it in our world. Now, again, there's probably better ways to do this. I'm not going to pretend I know this software super well. But we're just going to sort of get it in. Try and get it so there's no white space. Make sure there's no white space down here as well. Yep, looks like we're pretty good. So now we have this here. We can actually use this as a guide to build our map. And we can set the transparency of this as well. Layer, opacity. So set that to like 0.5. There we go. So with that, I'm just going to grab a brush. I'm going to start painting the world. Nope, never mind. We need to actually mask out. Yeah, that's what it is. So we need to mask our area. So let's go through and can we do it like this? We can. Add. So now we have an area there. So I'm just going to go through and I'll pause the video here and I'll come back once I've got this all masked out. Okay, so we've got that all masked out. It's by no means perfect. You can see I've got some bits here. I'm just going to go with this. We're going to then remove our stamp once I remember how to do that. Yep. So now we've got a map we can work with. Actually, I probably want to keep the stamp for a second. Let's jump into our mask and just add in some trees and stuff. So open the catalog. We'll find tree. Let's use this one here. Tree there, tree there, tree there, tree there. Now again, this is I'm not an artist, I'm not doing a tutorial for Inkarnate. It's just a quick way for me to get something up and running that's visual. And then we can also go through, we can select, I think water will work on this layer. No, it won't. There is a way to fill up the background with water. I guess I'm not going to know how to do it. Okay, looks like you need to mask it all out. We'll just leave it as empty for now. I think actually we're just going to work with that because I don't want to spend too long going through and doing all this. You can get the idea here. We're going to get rid of the mask. And we're just going to work with this as our map. We've got some things in here that we can use as detail points so that we can see the AI upscaling at work. But you get the general idea. So once you're done with that, we're going to hit export, which I don't remember how to do that. Save. Let's call this tutorial level. We'll let it do its save. You can do all sorts of crazy things with this software. You can make, like, it's made for, I think, D&D maps and that sort of thing. And you can make some really detailed maps. I definitely recommend, if you're looking for a way to get art without being an artist, taking a look at this one. It's fairly cheap. Once you've made it, you can export it and then you can cancel the monthly subscription and you're good to go. If I had a referral code, I would pop it in the description, but I do not. So that's all done saving now. We can go here and we can export as image. Now, one thing here is it does tell you that HD exporter is experimental. Now, I've not had any issues with this. I do have a decent amount of RAM though, so I'm not sure if maybe that's why. I've gone all the way up to 8K, so I'm going to hit save image, and we're just going to let it do its thing. I will come back when this is all done because it does take a little while. Okay, so that is all done, and we now have the JPEG in Krita here. Now, again, I'm not doing anything in Krita at the moment. I'm just using Krita as my editor to show things. We're going to jump into Topaz Labs Gigapixel. So this is the interface for Gigapixel. Now, Gigapixel is not free. There are free upscaling AI solutions. I am not familiar with how to use any of them, but I do know how to use this one. So I'm going to use this one. It's a little bit pricey, but there are free solutions, so just look at an upscaling solution that suits your budget. I'm just going to drag my image into here. This is the one from Incarnate. We're just going to let it go. Now, it'll give you a side-by-side here. It's a little bit chuggy, and it's probably going to be significantly worse because I'm recording. But let's find... Here we go, we got our tree. So we're going to upscale this to as high as we want. In this case, I'm going to upscale it to, let's see, let's go up to, I think the max you can do is 8 times. No, it says 3.91, but you can go up to 6 here. Sure, you can go higher than that. We also have a couple of different versions here. Depending on your image will depend on what you want to use. So this one will probably do better with lines. What about standard? They also have another software called Photo Upscale or Photo AI or something like that I do also have. I don't find it as good for this sort of thing. So we're just going to play around until we get a solution that we're happy with. That one there looks good. Very compressed. How does the rest of the image fare? Unfortunately, whenever you move, you got to check it all. Yeah, it looks like that's going to be how we're going to work. So we're going to use, in this case, very compressed, because that seems to give us very, very clear lines. Like, that's much nicer than this. There is a little bit of JPEG artifacting, but that's something I'm happy to deal with. We lose a bit of the texturing of the paper as well. But I think overall this result's better. When you have a much more complicated art piece, these settings are going to change a lot, and you might actually want to play around with the different other options. I was able to get a really good result for the demo level very quickly with this. So we're going to upscale this at 6 times, and we're going to just save that image, go through, leave it on the slowest compression, and just save it to the same folder with the suffix there. I'm going to hit save. Pause the video and we'll be back once that's done. Okay, so I ran into a quite a little hitch. It got stuck at 100% forever and then seemed to not be doing anything, so I cancelled it. I dropped it down to 3 times instead of 3.9 times. The settings we have in here, we're only ever going to actually go up to 16K anyway. So if we look at our zoom transitions, we're doing a 16 by 16 grid at 1024. So we only actually need our map to be our image to be this size in both X and Y anyway. So I dropped it down to 3 times, which is still coming out above that. And we now have a lovely 600 meg PNG here. So we're going to import that into Krita, which may take a little bit of time as well, and see how we go with that. Now, I probably could have got it to export at the full 32,000 by 32,000 if I'd closed up Unreal Engine and stopped having OBS open and all that jazz. Once this is opened up in Krita, I will be back. Okay, that was actually pretty quick. So we've now got our really high. Oh, I don't want to draw on this. Our really high AI upscaled one open up in Krita. So what we want to do is we want to cut this up into multiple pieces. Now we don't need the 2K image. We've got that one here. We can just use the one it captured. Oops, wrong set. We do, however, need to capture our 4x4 and our 16x16. So we need to know how big that needs to be. So for the 16x16, we'll start at the highest one. We need that to be, like I had calc up. So we're using a 16. We're wrong. We're using a 16x16 grid, and we are using 1024 as our resolution. So we need it to be this size in X and Y. So we're going to start off by just resizing our image to that size. All these operations are going to take a little while, so I'm just going to cut out the waiting time in between. So if there seems to be some cuts, that's why. Okay, with that, our image is now the correct size. Now, obviously, we could have upscaled directly to this size. I would always rather go a little bit over and have the option to pull it back if we need. But now we have it this size, we're going to go and use the image split feature in Krita. Now, again, I am positive Photoshop, GIMP, and all those other softwares have similar features. I don't know those softwares at all. We're going to use image split. And if that opens up, I'm going to just close Gigapixel. Don't need, we will need that in a second. Okay, so we want a 16x16 grid, which means we need 15x15 lines. So you can see that's going to have 16 across, and that way we just want to leave all these by default. And we're just going to hit apply, and that will go through the process. It will ask where you want to save them. So I am going to do a thing I would recommend as a poor idea and just put it straight in here. We're going to create a new folder called split images, and then another folder called 16 times. And we're going to go select folder, and we're just going to let it go through the process of that. I'm not sure. Oh, it's doing it now. So if I pull this over here, you can see it's creating them. Now it's going to go through and do, I think it's 256 images for this layer. So I will be back once this is completed. Okay, that process has been done. You'll see we have 256 items here. And if we open up a random one, it's just some see if we can get lucky and get one that has some of the land in it. There we go. So that's cut our grid up into 16x16. We're going to do the same process, but for the 4x4. So if we look here, don't import those. Same settings. We got a 4x4 grid, and it's 1024. So we want this grid to be this image to be 4096. So we're going to go to scale image. We go 4096. Hit OK. That shouldn't take too long with this. So now that is done, we can do the same process. We'll go to images, image split. We're going to go 3x3 because we only want 3 cuts. That'll make a 4x4 image. We're going to make another folder in here and just call it 4 times. And we're going to go apply. And we're going to put it in the 4 times select folder. And that's making our images. Now this one should be very quick. It should be almost done. Yep, there we go. There's our 16 images. So with that, we can close Krita. I'm not going to save any of that. We can close calculator. We don't want to import. We're going to go through an import process manually, just in case you haven't put it in the content folder, which you probably shouldn't. So with that, we're going to open up a content browser. I'm just going to dock this one. And we're going to open this here. And we're going to start with a 4x4. So we put them in here. I'm going to delete these ones. Is that how I want to do this? Let's call these zoom 1 captured. Let's just do the right thing and not delete stuff we don't need to delete. And zoom 2 captured. It's going to go through and replace all the references. This may take a moment. That's not too bad. Okay, so we're going to create a new folder. Actually, before I do this, I will just fix up any redirectors. There are none. Good. So we're going to make a new folder. I'm just going to call this Zoom 1. We're just going to follow the same naming. So for Zoom 1, that's the 4x4. We're going to highlight all these and drag them in here. Now, luckily, they're numbered in sequence. That's how Krita does this. So we can just find our segment data here. So on the map helper, there's two sections here. The zoom transitions is the settings for the transitions, and the data is the actual images. So we're going to go to index 1, which is our 4x4 grid, and we're going to highlight these and just drag these into here. And that will replace, nope, we have to delete the old ones first. Delete the old ones, and then drag them onto there. That will set them all there in the right order. Now we do still need to go through and do this same process here, and we're going to go to texture, filter, nearest, compression settings is user interface, and level of detail, texture group is UI. Once that's done, we can save all. It's going to take a moment, and then we do the same for Zoom 2. Which is the 16x16 grid. Obviously, this one is going to take a little bit longer, but let's go through the process anyway. Drag this into here. We let it all import. Now that that's done importing, we can see it's all working fine. We go to our index 2, which is the 16x16. We want to delete the segment textures, highlight all these, drag them onto the segment textures, and now we have them in there. Once that's done, we need to go to Asset Actions, Bulk Edit, Texture, Filter to Nearest, go to Compression Settings to User Interface, and then Level of Detail, set the Texture Group to UI. Close that, hit save all. This will take a moment. Okay, I've just realized that I have not actually set up the base level one. So we're going to open up Krita and we're going to just jump back into our image. Okay, so I've just got the 8K version that Incarnate exported here. Our base level image is, I think, 2048. Let's have a look at our settings here. Yep, 2048. So we're just going to resize this to 2048. Okay. And we're going to hit export. We're just going to go and split images, and we'll just save that here. Yep, so that is all done. We can close Krita up. Don't import. And we've got our content browser here and our image we just exported here. We're going to go into captured images, Zoom 1. We're just going to leave that saved as that. We're going to edit the image, set the texture group to UI, set the compression settings to user interface 2D and the filter mode to nearest, and then save that. And finally, the last thing we need to do is set that as the image here. Once that is done, we should be able to save, hit play. The minimap's correct, and here's our map in our world. And as we zoom in, you'll see that we're not losing a bunch of detail. If we run around, we can do all the normal things, and that's all working how we expect. So that is a bunch of things there. Explanation of what the tier grid system is, how it works, why you might want to use it, as well as how you could use AI to speed up the process of making art-based grids. We've also covered the process of using a square map for a rectangular world here. So if you have any questions regarding this process, please feel free to leave them in the comments section down below, or reach out to me via the normal channels. Thank you very much for watching, and I hope this has been helpful.